It was a bright autumn afternoon when Evan Hartley heard the sound of crying near the small creek behind the park. The sky was soft blue, leaves rustling in shades of amber and gold, and the air smelled faintly of earth and rain. He had just finished repairing his neighbor's fence and was heading home to prepare lunch for his 7-year-old son Noah. But that sound, faint, broken sobs, froze him mid-step. He followed the sound through the rustling trees until he saw her, a little girl maybe 5 or 6, sitting on a damp log, her pink dress streaked with mud, clutching a torn teddy bear. Her shoes were missing, and her eyes, wide and shimmering with tears, looked up at him like she'd just seen a lifeline appear from nowhere. Evan knelt slowly, keeping his voice gentle. "Hey there, sweetheart, are you okay? Are you lost?" The girl sniffled, hesitating before whispering, "I can't find Mommy." Her voice trembled like she was afraid to even say it out loud. Evan's heart clenched. He'd seen that look before. The lost, frightened look of a child who suddenly realizes the world is much bigger and lonelier than they thought. It reminded him too much of the day Noah's mother left. A note on the table, tears on his son's face, and silence that lasted years. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of love to heal broken hearts, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Every story here reminds us that goodness still exists in this world. Evan took off his jacket and gently wrapped it around the girl's shoulders. "You're safe now," he said softly. "We'll find your mom, I promise." He guided her back toward his pickup truck, keeping an eye out in case anyone was searching nearby, but the park was unusually empty for a Saturday afternoon. He buckled her in beside Noah, who looked at her curiously, and handed her a bottle of water. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked as he drove toward town. She hesitated again, then whispered, "Leela." At the police station, the small town officer took notes and called nearby departments, but no missing child reports matched her description. No one had come forward. The hours passed. Evan stayed with Leela the whole time, refusing to leave her side. She clung to his sleeve, her tiny fingers trembling. When she finally fell asleep in the waiting area, her head resting on his arm, something inside Evan shifted. A protective warmth, a sense of responsibility he couldn't explain. The police suggested she stay in foster care temporarily until her family could be located, but Evan's chest tightened at the thought. He had seen what the system could do. His late sister had been through it, shuffled from home to home, losing parts of herself each time. "If no one's claimed her yet," he said firmly, "I can take care of her for now, just until her family's found." And so began the most unexpected chapter of his life. Days turned into weeks, and Leela became part of their small world. Evan taught her how to make pancakes in the morning, how to feed the chickens behind their little farmhouse, how to chase rainbows after a storm. Noah adored her. He shared his crayons, his secret hiding spots, even his favorite superhero blanket. For the first time in a long while, the house echoed with laughter again. Leela smiled more each day, though sometimes she still woke up at night crying out for her mother. Evan would sit beside her bed until she calmed down, telling her gentle stories about angels watching over lost children until they found their way home. He started to notice details. The way she counted before speaking, like she'd been taught to be careful with her words. The expensive stitching on the dress she'd been wearing when he found her, the faint mark of a medical bracelet that had been removed. There was more to her story, but Evan didn't push. He just wanted her to feel safe. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, Leela looked up from her coloring book and said softly, "Evan, when you hug me, it feels like my daddy used to." The words hit him like a quiet wave. He smiled, hiding the lump in his throat. "Well, then I must be doing something right." But peace never lasts forever. It was a Wednesday when everything changed. A black SUV rolled down the gravel driveway, its tires crunching on the stones. Out stepped a tall woman in a white coat, her presence commanding yet fragile, as if carrying years of exhaustion beneath her grace. Her dark hair framed a face both beautiful and haunted, and behind her were 2 men in suits. She scanned the yard, the chickens, the porch swing, and then her gaze fell on Leela, who had just run outside to pick flowers. The girl froze. "Mummy?" Evan turned, stunned. Leela dropped the flowers and ran into the woman's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. The woman knelt, holding her so tightly it seemed like she'd never let go again. The sight should have filled Evan with relief. The little girl was finally reunited with her mother. But something in the woman's trembling made his chest ache. Her eyes glistened with tears as she looked up at him. "You're the man who found her?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I've been searching for weeks, I thought." She stopped, choking on her words. Her name was Isabella Rains, a billionaire philanthropist and CEO of a global healthcare company. Her daughter had been taken from a park in the city after a charity event. No ransom, no clues. She had spent every day since using her power and wealth to find her child. And now, somehow, Leela had ended up miles away in a quiet town with a struggling single father. Even explained everything. How he found her, how the police had no leads, how he only wanted to keep her safe. Isabella listened silently, her hands trembling as she stroked Leela's hair. When the girl fell asleep in her lap, Isabella finally spoke in a low voice. "You've done more for her than anyone else has. Thank you truly. But there's something you should know." She took a deep breath, her voice barely steady. "The night Leela disappeared, she wasn't supposed to be at that event. I wasn't even supposed to be there. Her father, my husband, died in a plane crash 2 months before. I was drowning in grief, and I made mistakes. I trusted people I shouldn't have. I found out later that someone close to me had planned to use her disappearance to force me into selling my company. I've been living a nightmare ever since." She paused, her eyes glassy with guilt. "But that's not all, Evan. There's something else. My investigators found out where Leela was found. Near the creek. That land used to belong to my husband's family." Evan blinked, confused. "Your husband's family?" She nodded. "Yes, and when we traced the old ownership records, we found your name listed as a descendant of the Hartleys who sold it 40 years ago. Evan, my husband's grandmother was Margaret Hartley. That makes you her great-nephew. You and my husband were distant relatives." The revelation hit him like thunder. He had never known much about his family's past, only that they'd lost their farm decades ago in a bad deal. Isabella's husband, the man Leela looked so much like, was, in a strange twist of fate, part of the same family line. Leela wasn't just a lost child he'd helped, she was family. The world felt suddenly smaller, heartbreakingly connected by invisible threads. When Isabella prepared to take Leela home, the girl clung to Evan's leg, crying, "I don't want to go. I want to stay with you and Noah." Isabella knelt, tears falling freely now. "Sweetheart, you'll see him again, I promise." Her voice shook as she looked at Evan. Would you be willing to stay in touch? Maybe visit us in the city? She's grown attached to you, and honestly, so have I." Over the next few weeks, Isabella kept her word. She called often, sending photos of Leela's art, her smiles returning. Eventually, she invited Evan and Noah to visit their home, a sprawling estate overlooking the ocean, filled with light and laughter once more. But even among all that wealth, it was clear that what mattered most to Isabella wasn't her empire. It was the family she'd nearly lost. One late afternoon, as they watched the sunset from her garden, she turned to Evan and said quietly, "You reminded me that money can't buy what really matters. You gave my daughter safety, love and trust, things I forgot how to give. You gave me hope again." She smiled faintly, tears glistening. "You didn't just save her, Evan, you saved me, too." For the first time in years, Evan allowed himself to breathe, deeply, freely, without the weight of loss pressing down on his chest. He didn't know what the future would bring, but as he watched Leela and Noah chasing butterflies through the tall grass, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. Sometimes fate doesn't bring people together by chance. Sometimes it takes a broken road, a lost child, and two grieving souls to remind the world that love, pure, unconditional love, still exists. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps us spread more stories of hope, compassion, and second chances. And before you go, comment below, do you believe people cross paths for a reason? Because sometimes the lost aren't meant to stay lost. They're meant to lead us home.